The next speaker will be sharing on the nature-based solutions. How can we ensure the right investment in nature for a green recovery? Please welcome Ms. Katie Dawkins, Program Officer on Nature-Based Solutions from UNEP-WCMC. Please welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. It's an honour to join this really interesting and important discussion. And thank you to the distinguished speakers and organisers for the opportunity to talk today about nature-based solutions, or NBS, and how investing in these type of solutions can help address multiple challenges, and also how NBS can contribute towards meeting global goals, as outlined in David's presentation. So, what are NBS? As many of you will know, earlier this year, the UN Environment Assembly delivered a multilaterally agreed definition of NBS. And I think if we move to the next slide, we've got that definition there as well. Lovely. So NBS are essentially actions to protect, conserve, restore, sustainably use and manage nature to address multiple challenges while also delivering a range of benefits, including for biodiversity. While this definition is relatively new, it does draw on a long and important history of working with nature. The concept of NBS has steadily been growing in prominence in discussions, commitments, and action at national and international levels. So why is this? Why are NBS so important? Essentially, as we've discussed today, we all impact and depend on nature. In the business context, the World Economic Forum publication Nature is Rising noted that all businesses depend on nature, either directly or through their supply chains. And as we've heard earlier today, over half of global GDP, some 44 trillion US dollars, is moderately or highly dependent on nature and its services. MBS are one way we can help protect, conserve, restore, and sustainably manage the ecosystem services that we rely on. But interestingly, the flows of finance towards nature-based solutions remain insufficient for them to realise their full potential, and private sector investment in NBS remains relatively low. NBS can be used to address a wide range of challenges and integrate action for nature and climate. Today, I'm going to talk about NBS in two particular contexts with specific reference to business, but it should be noted that NBS are important for all stakeholders. Next slide, please. So the first context I'd like to talk about NBS is MBS for mitigation. MBS for mitigation commonly include actions such as the protection of natural ecosystems with high carbon stocks, like mangroves, actions for conservation agriculture, so a type of ecosystem management, and reforestation or forest restoration. These measures can have positive impacts for biodiversity, for example, by increasing the area or connectivity of habitats, while also storing or sequestering carbon and providing a range of other benefits. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, scenarios for emissions reductions are really clear. To keep temperature rise below the Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degrees C, we must achieve net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. This will require, in addition to massive and rapid decarbonisation, a significant contribution from land-based options like NBS. Essentially, without well-designed, implemented, managed, monitored and safeguarded NBS, we're very unlikely to meet national targets, such as those outlined in nationally determined contributions and in global goals. Private sector action is really key to helping to scale up this appropriate use of NBS to help meet these goals. Many businesses are already engaging with some forms of NBS for climate mitigation by reducing land-based emissions for the emissions that they themselves are responsible for, as a means of compensating for ongoing emissions as a company moves towards net zero, and to neutralise any emissions that remain when the net zero deadline is reached. The concept of companies working through their supply chains to reduce land-based emissions is also an important one. For example, Nature-Based Insetting and the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure are working together to help companies set and implement evidence-based targets for mitigating and insetting their impacts through NBS, including in Thailand. Next slide, please. The second type of NBS I'd like to touch on briefly today is NBS for adaptation, or how NBS can help us adapt to the impacts of climate change that are sadly becoming more frequent and severe. National level adaptation planning processes remain a critical element in the global response to the impacts of climate change, and businesses can help implement important actions to support this. MBS for adaptation can be used alone, in addition to, or instead of other approaches. They can also help businesses to adapt and build resilience for their own operations, in the landscapes they work in, and throughout their supply chains. And some examples of MBS for adaptation could include mangrove restoration in addition to engineered sea defences for protecting coastal assets like factories or roads, that also then have the benefits of carbon storage, supporting local fisheries and also supporting biodiversity. Another example might be forest restoration to reduce siltation and dredging costs for water management, while also reducing landslide risks for local communities, sequestering carbon and improving habitat for wildlife. Green space or living roofs and walls in urban environments can also be considered MBS where they meet the relevant criteria. And for example, MBS have been implemented in Bangkok to reduce flood risk, increase resilience, and create benefits for health and well-being. When planned, designed, and implemented appropriately, in consultation and cooperation with local communities, these approaches can help fill the adaptation gap in a cost-effective way and help make businesses and communities more resilient. As Adapt Now, the Global Commission on Adaptation report suggests, restoring the mangrove forest to offer protection from rising sea and storm surges is 2 to 5 times cheaper than building engineered structures like engineered breakwaters, while also storing carbon, improving water quality, and supporting local fisheries. Next slide, please. So finally, I think it's important to mention that there are some really important considerations around how, when, and where NBS can contribute to addressing the many fundamental and interlinked challenges that we face. Social and environmental safeguards and standards are vital to effective and sustainable NBS. NBS must be appropriately planned and implemented to be successful. I think here it's important to mention that NBS won't necessarily be the right choice for every challenging context. And also, crucially, the NBS must be accompanied by other actions to achieve global goals. But hopefully, as this short presentation has illustrated, there are huge opportunities too. The growing body of evidence, both in Thailand and elsewhere, really shows the potential that NBS have to help contribute towards the health and resilience of us as individuals, our businesses, and our communities. Private sector support for actions on and appropriate investments in NBS are therefore a really key part of working towards a green recovery, a just transition, and ultimately progress towards a net zero and nature positive economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Katie. This is it's clear that actually on the nature-based solutions, there are some examples that already been exist, and some private sectors or some solutions already been done as well. So this could be a good lesson that's for us for how we can include or see more or implement more of the nature-based solutions, either for mitigation or adaptations on this.